Hey everyone, and welcome to the final video in this Introduction to Item Analysis series. I hope the topics that we've covered over the past 3 videos have informed you and maybe even piqued your curiosity to learn more about each of the methods that we've discussed. Remember, this is simply a high-level overview, and there's much more to learn about reliability, validity, and even the cognitive levels at which we can write our questions. This video is going to talk about distractor analysis. Now, as a quick recap, let's talk about all of the component pieces of a multiple choice quiz question. In the literature, the question is often called the stem, and the potential answers are called alternatives. The correct alternative is, not surprisingly, called the answer, and the incorrect alternatives are called distractors. One of the benefits to conducting this analysis is that it can help us understand how our alternatives are performing. When we run an item analysis report, we'll often have a section that tells us the percentage of test takers that chose each individual alternative. Now, this is very valuable information. Let's look at an example. Let's say that we have 5 possible alternatives for our question. When we run the report, it seems as though most of our students are choosing either the right answer or only 2 of the remaining 4 options. Well, it seems that 2 of the distractors are working well, but the others aren't. What could possibly be wrong? This brings us to some guidelines. For these guidelines, we're going to turn to a bit of research done by Halladina and Downing. Doctors Halladina and Downing have done a tremendous amount of research in analyzing rules and guidelines for writing effective multiple-choice questions. To compile this information, they performed a meta-analysis of 43 item writing rules. They combed the literature. They looked at what other researchers found was important in writing questions. If you're curious about what all of them are, I suggest reading Validity of a Taxonomy of Multiple-Choice Item Writing Rules, and that was published in 1989. Now, how many answer options should I provide? 2, 5, 10? Now, this has a huge impact on how we write our exams. More alternatives means more writing time for teachers. It also means more time for the students to consider each alternative as they go through an exam. Now, sure, 5 answer alternatives would tell us a lot about the students and their conceptions of the topic. But is it worth it to spend so much time on writing that many? Well, it turns out the answer is as many plausible alternatives as you can write. But 3 is often sufficient. What does this mean? When you're writing your multiple choice questions, try to come up with as many plausible alternatives as you can. Emphasis on plausible. This means no joke or obviously wrong answers. This means that each answer option should be carefully considered and written. Now, you can rely on misconceptions of the students to write plausible alternatives. What would a student with a flawed understanding of the materials think is the right answer? You can also use the reporting to continuously update your alternatives. If we see that a handful of alternatives are being chosen at a rate at less than 5%, plus or minus, we might want to think about editing or removing that alternative as an option. If 3 alternatives, so the correct answer and 2 other distractors, is all you can come up with, that's absolutely fine. The previously mentioned meta-analysis found that item discrimination was not greatly affected by the number of answer options available to the students when the number of answer options was 3 or more. The key really is quality over quantity. The next thing we'll talk about lets us lean just a little bit on item discrimination. When we're looking at a report, it's a good thing to look at the response distribution of your top and bottom 27% separately, but specifically the bottom 27%. When we break out the responses of this group, it does give us some insight on how those students are choosing between the alternatives. So if there's a question with a particularly high index of discrimination, that's a good place to start. How are the bottom 27% of students answering? Are they fixating on one incorrect alternative? Well, this might mean that there's a misconception among our bottom students. Are they evenly distributed among the alternatives? Well, maybe the question's too difficult or they're simply guessing at this point. So let's take an example. Let's look at this question. Well, it looks fairly normal, but when we break out and look at only the bottom 27%, it tells us a different story. It shows us that these students are choosing one of the distractors more frequently than the correct answer. Why might this be? Well, we can look at each distractor they're choosing and then think about why these students might think that is the correct answer. Further, these results can advise you on little subtle things to adjust as you teach the topic in subsequent years. Well, that's certainly a lot about item analysis. From how hard questions are, to which students are answering correctly, to how they're choosing the answers, there is a ton of information in these reports. However, I think that all of this is vital for teachers to understand. There's more to an exam than the letter grade that students receive. There's a ton of thought that needs to go into our end in writing exams. Understanding how to analyze the results of a quiz or an exam on an item-by-item level helps us write and/or choose the best options possible to tell us which students know their stuff and which ones don't. I want to take a minute to thank everyone for sticking with me through this video series. I'd like to also thank the authors of the books that helped inform me on the topic. They say that the best way to learn something is to teach it, and I can attest that that certainly is true. I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Will Monroe at Louisiana State University Law School for being my guinea pig, and also Beth Donahue for pushing really hard on these topics in legal education. Thanks everyone for watching.